The sound of her own sobbing broke the silence of the winter night, each breath crystallizing in the frigid air as Emma Northfield stumbled through the mountain pass with nowhere left to go. Ice clung to her eyelashes, and frozen tears traced paths down her wind-burned cheeks as she wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, knowing it would do nothing against the merciless cold that had descended upon the San Bernardino Mountains in January of 1881. She had left the stagecoach station 3 hours ago after discovering that the man she was supposed to marry had died 2 weeks prior in a mining accident, leaving her stranded in California with no money, no family, and no way back to Missouri. The blizzard had come out of nowhere, unusual for Southern California but not unheard of in these elevated regions. Emma's legs trembled with exhaustion and cold as she pushed forward, unable to see more than a few feet ahead through the swirling snow. She had been walking toward what the station manager said was the nearest town, but she must have taken a wrong turn somewhere because there was nothing but wilderness around her now. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago, and she could barely feel her feet inside her worn leather boots. When her knees finally buckled and she collapsed into a snowdrift, Emma thought this was how her story would end. 22 years old and dying alone in the mountains, frozen solid before anyone even knew to look for her. She closed her eyes against the stinging wind, too tired to cry anymore, too cold to care. That was when she heard the sound of hoofbeats. Emma tried to lift her head, but her body would not obey. The hoofbeats grew closer, accompanied by a man's voice calling out against the wind. Strong hands suddenly gripped her shoulders, turning her over, and through her blurred vision she saw a face beneath a snow-covered hat, dark eyes wide with concern. "Good God, you are half frozen to death," the man said, his voice deep and urgent. He did not wait for a response before scooping her up in his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. Emma felt herself being lifted onto a horse, felt the man climb up behind her and pull her back against his chest. He wrapped his heavy coat around both of them, surrounding her with warmth that felt almost painful against her frozen skin. "Stay with me now," he said close to her ear as the horse began to move. "My ranch is not far. You are going to be all right." Emma wanted to thank him, wanted to ask who he was, but her teeth were chattering too violently to form words. She simply leaned back against the solid warmth of his body and let him guide them through the storm. She had no idea how he could see where he was going, but the horse seemed to know the way, moving with confidence through the blinding snow. It felt like both an eternity and no time at all before they reached a large wooden structure. The man dismounted quickly, pulling Emma down into his arms again and carried her toward a house. He kicked the door open and brought her inside, where the warmth of a crackling fireplace immediately began to thaw her frozen face. "Get these wet clothes off you before you catch pneumonia," he said, setting her down in a chair near the fire. He turned away and began rummaging through a chest, pulling out blankets and what looked like a large flannel shirt. "Can you manage, or do you need help?" Emma's frozen fingers fumbled uselessly at the buttons of her dress. She tried to speak, but her jaw was still locked with cold. The man glanced back at her, saw her struggling, and immediately came over. His movements were efficient and completely professional as he helped her out of her wet outer garments, averting his eyes as much as possible while making sure she was wrapped in dry blankets. He handed her the flannel shirt. "Put this on under the blankets. I will turn around. Get everything wet off you, including your undergarments, or the cold will settle into your bones." Too miserable and desperate to be modest, Emma did as he instructed. Her fingers barely worked, but she managed to remove her soaked clothing and pull on the shirt, which fell nearly to her knees. The man seemed to sense when she was finished because he turned around and immediately wrapped her in more blankets, then pulled the chair closer to the fire. "Stay right here," he commanded, then disappeared into another room. Emma huddled in the blankets, feeling the painful prickling sensation as her extremities began to thaw. She looked around the room for the first time. It was a simple but well-built cabin, with sturdy furniture and a few personal touches that suggested a bachelor lived here. Saddles and gear hung on the walls, and through a doorway she could see a kitchen area. The man returned carrying a steaming mug. "Hot broth," he said, kneeling beside her chair and holding the mug to her lips. "Drink slowly. Small sips." As Emma sipped the hot liquid, feeling it warm her from the inside, she finally got a good look at her rescuer. He was probably around 26 or 27, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends and strong, weathered features that spoke of a life spent outdoors. His eyes were a warm brown, full of concern as he watched her drink. He was handsome in a rugged way, with broad shoulders and calloused hands that somehow managed to be gentle as he held the mug steady for her. "Thank you," Emma finally managed to whisper, her voice hoarse. "What in God's name were you doing out there?" he asked, his tone more worried than accusatory. "Do you have any idea how close you came to dying? Another hour and I would not have found you in time." "I got lost," Emma said, taking another sip of broth. "I was trying to reach town from the stagecoach station. I did not expect the storm." "Nobody did. This is the worst blizzard we have had in 5 years." He set the mug down on a small table and looked at her seriously. "I am Ryder Whitmore. This is my ranch, about 7 miles from San Bernardino proper." "What is your name?" "Emma Northfield. I came from Missouri to meet my intended, but when I arrived, I learned he had died in a mining accident. I had nowhere to go, and the station manager said there was a town nearby where I might find work, but I must have taken a wrong turn." Ryder's expression softened with sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss." "I barely knew him," Emma admitted. "It was arranged through letters. I have never actually met him, but now I am stranded here with no money and no prospects." She felt tears threatening again and blinked them back. She had cried enough for one night. "You are safe here," Ryder said firmly. "The storm should pass by morning. Once you are recovered, we will figure out what to do. For now, you need to rest and get warm." He stood and added another log to the fire. "You can have my bed tonight. I will sleep out here." "I cannot take your bed," Emma protested weakly. "You can and you will. You have been through an ordeal and you need proper rest." His tone left no room for argument. He helped her stand, keeping the blankets wrapped around her, and guided her into a small bedroom. The bed was simple but looked clean and comfortable. "I will be right outside if you need anything. Do not hesitate to call out." Emma climbed into the bed, still wrapped in blankets, and sank into the mattress with relief. She was asleep within minutes, too exhausted to worry about her situation or what tomorrow would bring. When she woke, pale morning light was filtering through a small window. The sound of the howling wind had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. Emma sat up slowly, her body aching in places she did not know could ache. She was still wearing Ryder's flannel shirt, and her clothes were nowhere to be seen. Wrapping a blanket around herself like a shawl, she ventured out of the bedroom. Ryder was at the stove, cooking something that smelled wonderful. He turned when he heard her and smiled. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Sore, but much better. Thank you again for saving my life." "I am glad I went out when I did. I had a feeling something was wrong. Sometimes you just know when the weather turns that bad that someone might need help." He gestured to the table. "Sit down. Breakfast is almost ready. Your clothes are drying by the fire. They should be wearable in a few hours." Emma sat at the table, acutely aware that she was essentially naked under the blanket and shirt. Ryder did not seem bothered by it, treating her with the same respectful courtesy he had shown the night before. He set a plate in front of her piled with eggs, bacon, and thick slices of bread with butter. "This looks amazing," Emma said, realizing she was starving. She could not remember the last time she had eaten. They ate in companionable silence for a while before Ryder spoke. "I have been thinking about your situation. San Bernardino is growing fast, and there are opportunities for work if you are willing. There is a boarding house in town run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She is always looking for help, and she provides room and board as part of the wages. I could take you there and introduce you once the snow clears enough to travel safely." "That would be incredibly kind of you," Emma said, feeling a rush of gratitude. "I do not know how I can ever repay you. You do not owe me anything. Any decent person would have done the same." Ryder paused, then added, "Though I have to admit, I would like the company for a bit. It gets lonely out here by myself, especially in winter. If you are comfortable staying a few days until you are fully recovered, you are welcome to." Emma looked at this man who had saved her life and was offering her kindness with no expectation of anything in return. "I would like that," she said softly, "as long as it would not be an imposition. Not at all. In fact, it would be nice to have someone to talk to who is not a horse or a cow." Over the next few days, Emma and Ryder fell into an easy routine. The snow remained heavy, making travel into town impossible, but the ranch house was well stocked with provisions. Emma insisted on helping with cooking and cleaning, grateful to have something useful to do. Her clothes had dried, though they were somewhat worse for wear after their soaking. She learned that Ryder had inherited the ranch from his uncle 2 years ago and had been working hard to build it up. He raised cattle and horses, doing most of the work himself with the help of a few ranch hands who lived in a bunkhouse on the property, but were currently snowed in at their own homes in town. He was patient and thoughtful, with a quiet strength that Emma found deeply appealing. Ryder, in turn, learned about Emma's life in Missouri, how she had been living with her aunt after her parents died when she was 18, and how she had accepted the marriage proposal from a man she had never met because her aunt was getting too old to care for her, and there had been no other prospects. Emma spoke of her love of reading and her dream of one day having a real home of her own. On the third day, Emma was washing dishes while Ryder brought in more firewood. When he came inside, stamping snow from his boots, he found her humming softly to herself. She turned and smiled at him, and something shifted in the air between them. Ryder set the wood down carefully, his eyes never leaving her face. "Emma," he said slowly, "I need to tell you something." She dried her hands on a towel, her heart suddenly beating faster. "What is it?" "These past few days have been the happiest I have had in a long time. I know it is too soon, and I do not want to make you uncomfortable, but I find myself not wanting you to leave. Not because I need help around the house, but because I enjoy your company. Because when I look at you, I see someone I could care about very deeply, if you would give me the chance." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had been having similar thoughts but had been afraid to acknowledge them, afraid she was just feeling gratitude toward her rescuer. But looking at Ryder now, seeing the genuine emotion in his eyes, she knew it was more than that. "I feel the same way," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought perhaps I was just confused or grateful, but it is more than that. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel like I could belong here." Ryder crossed the room in 3 long strides and took her hands in his. "I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other, but out here in the West, sometimes you have to trust your instincts. And every instinct I have is telling me that you coming into my life is the best thing that has ever happened to me." I think finding you in that storm might have been fate, Emma said, squeezing his hands. I thought I was going to die out there, but instead, I found someone who makes me want to live more fully than I ever have. Ryder lifted one hand to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin with infinite tenderness. I promised myself when I found you out there, with those frozen tears on your face, that I would keep you warm from now on. I meant it then, and I mean it now if you will have me. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but these were warm tears, tears of joy and hope. I will have you, Ryder Whitmore. I absolutely will. When he kissed her, it was gentle and sweet, full of promise and possibility. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck and let herself fall into the moment, into the feeling of being wanted and cherished. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. We should do this properly, Ryder said, resting his forehead against hers. Court you the right way. I do not want anyone thinking I took advantage of you when you were vulnerable. I appreciate that, Emma said, though part of her wanted to throw propriety to the wind. But I do not want to go to Mrs. Patterson's boarding house now. I want to stay here with you. Then we will have to get married, and soon. I will not have your reputation damaged because of me. Ryder grinned. Not that I am complaining. I was hoping you would agree to marry me eventually. I just did not expect it to be within a week of meeting you. Emma laughed, the sound bright and free. Neither did I, but here we are. Yes, Ryder, I will marry you. The snow finally cleared enough for travel the next day. Ryder hitched up his wagon and they rode into San Bernardino together. The town was bustling despite the recent storm, with people clearing snow from storefronts and going about their business. Ryder took Emma first to a dress shop, where he insisted on buying her a proper dress and warm cloak. The shop owner, a kind woman named Mrs. Chen, fussed over Emma like a mother hen, clearly approving of Ryder's choice. You have done well for yourself, Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Chen said with a knowing smile. This young lady has a good heart. I can see it in her eyes. Their next stop was the church, where they spoke with Reverend Thomas about arranging a wedding. The Reverend was a jovial man in his 50s who had known Ryder since he came to San Bernardino. I am delighted to hear you are settling down, Reverend Thomas said. You have worked too hard and too alone for too long. When would you like the ceremony? As soon as possible, Ryder said, glancing at Emma. We do not need anything elaborate, just something simple and proper. How about Saturday? That gives us 4 days to prepare and post the banns. You will need witnesses, of course. I can ask my ranch hands, Tom and Charlie. They should be back to work by then, Ryder said. Emma felt a flutter of nervousness. 4 days until she would be married to a man she had known for less than a week. It should have terrified her, but instead, she felt a deep sense of rightness. She caught Ryder's eye and smiled, and he reached over to squeeze her hand reassuringly. They spent the rest of the day in town, with Ryder introducing Emma to various shopkeepers and townspeople. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, clearly pleased that the bachelor rancher had finally found himself a wife. Emma met Mrs. Patterson, the boarding house owner, who turned out to be exactly as kind as Ryder had described. When she heard their story, she clapped her hands together in delight. How romantic! Rescued from a blizzard and falling in love, it is like something out of a novel. She pressed a package into Emma's hands. This is a wedding gift. I made too many preserves this year and I want you to have some. That evening back at the ranch, Emma and Ryder sat by the fire together. Ryder had his arm around her shoulders and she was leaning against him, marveling at how natural it felt to be close to him. Are you having second thoughts? Ryder asked quietly. Not even for a moment, Emma replied. Are you? Never. I just want to make sure you are not feeling pressured. I meant what I said about courting you properly. If you want more time, we can wait. Emma turned to look at him directly. "I do not want to wait. I know my own heart, Ryder. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He kissed her then, deeper than before, and Emma felt heat spread through her entire body. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "4 more days," Ryder murmured against her hair. "I can be patient for 4 more days." The next days passed in a blur of preparation. Emma worked on altering the dress Mrs. Chen had sold her at a generous discount, taking it in to fit her slender frame perfectly. Ryder's ranch hands, Tom and Charlie, returned to work and were delighted to hear about the wedding. They were both grizzled cowboys in their 40s who treated Ryder like a younger brother and immediately adopted Emma into their circle. "About time the boss found himself a good woman," Tom said, tipping his hat to Emma. "This place needs a lady's touch." Charlie, the quieter of the two, simply nodded his agreement and offered to hunt a turkey for the wedding dinner. "Cannot have a celebration without proper food," he said. On Friday evening, the night before the wedding, Emma was suddenly seized with nerves. She and Ryder were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and pink. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Whitmore. Tomorrow her entire life would change. "Ryder, do you think we are crazy?" she asked suddenly. "Getting married so quickly." He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Maybe by some people's standards, but I have learned that life is unpredictable out here. You cannot always wait for the perfect moment or the perfect circumstances. Sometimes you just have to trust what you feel and take the leap." He turned to face her. "I love you, Emma. I know it is fast, but I do. When I saw you lying in that snow, something inside me recognized you, and every day since has only confirmed it. You are the person I have been waiting for without even knowing I was waiting." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you wrapped your coat around me and promised I would be all right. Those frozen tears on your face nearly broke my heart," Ryder said softly, reaching up to brush away the happy tears that were falling now. "I promised I would keep you warm from now on, and I intend to spend the rest of my life keeping that promise." They kissed under the sunset, and Emma knew with absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with sunlight sparkling off the snow like diamonds. Emma dressed carefully in her altered gown, which was a soft blue color that brought out her eyes. Mrs. Patterson arrived early with several other women from town, insisting on helping Emma prepare. They fussed over her hair, pinning it up in an elegant style and weaving in some dried flowers that Mrs. Chen had contributed. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, standing back to admire her handiwork. "Ryder is a lucky man." The ceremony was held in the small church, which was packed with more people than Emma had expected. It seemed that half the town had turned out to witness the wedding. Ryder stood at the altar looking handsome in a dark suit that Emma had not seen before, his eyes lighting up when he saw her walking down the aisle on Tom's arm, since she had no family to give her away. Reverend Thomas performed a beautiful ceremony, speaking about love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage. When it came time for the vows, Ryder's voice was strong and clear as he promised to love, honor, and cherish Emma for the rest of his life. Emma's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she made the same promises, meaning every word with her whole heart. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas declared with a broad smile. "Ryder, you may kiss your bride." Ryder pulled Emma into his arms and kissed her soundly, to the cheers and applause of everyone gathered. Emma felt like she was floating as they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, officially married. The reception was held at the church hall, with food and music provided by the generous townspeople. Charlie's turkey was the centerpiece of a feast that included pies, bread, roasted vegetables, and even a cake that Mrs. Chen had baked and decorated. Emma found herself swept up in a whirlwind of congratulations and well wishes from people she had only just met but who already felt like community. "You are one of us now," Mrs. Patterson said warmly, hugging Emma tight. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, you just let us know." As the party wound down in the late afternoon, Ryder and Emma finally climbed into the wagon to head back to the ranch. Tom and Charlie were staying in town for the night, giving the newlyweds privacy. The sun was setting as they arrived home, casting long shadows across the snow. Ryder helped Emma down from the wagon, but instead of heading inside, he swept her up into his arms. "I believe there is a tradition about carrying your bride across the threshold," he said with a grin. Emma laughed and wrapped her arms around his neck as he carried her inside and kicked the door shut behind them. He set her down gently in front of the fireplace, which someone, probably Tom or Charlie, had stocked with wood and kindling ready to light. "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitmore," Ryder said softly, his hands resting on her waist. "I like the sound of that," Emma replied, reaching up to cup his face. "Mrs. Emma Whitmore." "I intend to spend the rest of my life making you happy," Ryder promised, his expression serious despite the joy in his eyes. "You already have," Emma whispered. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me a home, a future, and a love I never dreamed I would find." Their wedding night was everything Emma had hoped for and more. Ryder was gentle and patient, taking his time to make sure she was comfortable. In the flickering firelight, they explored their new relationship as husband and wife, discovering each other with tenderness and growing passion. When Emma finally fell asleep in Ryder's arms, she felt completely safe and deeply cherished. The winter gradually gave way to spring, and Emma settled into her new life as a rancher's wife. She discovered that she loved the work, helping Ryder with the animals and keeping the house. Tom and Charlie became like family, often joining them for dinner and entertaining Emma with stories about their adventures in the West. Emma also made friends in town, particularly with Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen. She joined the ladies' auxiliary at the church and started helping with community events. San Bernardino was growing rapidly, with new businesses opening regularly and families moving in from back east. Emma felt privileged to be part of this vibrant, developing community. Ryder's ranch continued to thrive. With Emma's help and support, he was able to expand his operations, buying more cattle and breeding horses that became known throughout the region for their quality. The ranch became a successful enterprise, but more than that, it became a real home filled with love and laughter. In late summer, Emma began to feel unwell in the mornings. At first, she thought it was just something she had eaten, but when the nausea persisted for over a week, Mrs. Patterson pulled her aside after church one Sunday. "Dear, I do not mean to pry, but I think you might want to visit Dr. Harrison," she said with a knowing smile. "You have that certain glow about you." Emma's eyes widened as realization dawned. "You think I might be pregnant?" "I would bet money on it. I have been a midwife long enough to recognize the signs." Dr. Harrison confirmed it the next day. Emma was indeed expecting, probably about 2 months along. She rode home from town in a daze, trying to process this new development. She and Ryder had hoped for children eventually, but she had not expected it to happen so soon. By the time she reached the ranch, however, her shock had transformed into pure joy. She was going to have a baby. Ryder's baby. She found him in the barn, checking on a mare that was close to foaling. "Ryder, I need to tell you something," she called from the doorway. He looked up, immediately concerned by something in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" Emma walked over to him, unable to contain her smile. I am more than all right. I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Ryder's expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and then absolute elation. He let out a whoop of joy and picked Emma up, spinning her around before carefully setting her back down. "Are you sure? When? How are you feeling?" Emma laughed at his barrage of questions. "Yes, I am sure, Doctor. Harrison confirmed it today. The baby should come in early spring, and I am feeling wonderful now that I know what is causing the morning sickness." "A baby," Ryder breathed, his hand coming to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents." "You are going to be an amazing father," Emma said, covering his hand with hers. "And you will be an incredible mother." Ryder pulled her close, holding her carefully as if she were made of glass. "I love you so much, Emma. You have given me everything I ever wanted and more." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, despite Emma's continued morning sickness in the first few months. Ryder was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying that she was working too hard or not resting enough. Emma found his concern endearing, even when it became a bit excessive. By the time winter returned, Emma was very visibly pregnant. The women of the town rallied around her, throwing a party where they gifted her with tiny clothes, blankets, and all the supplies she would need for the baby. Mrs. Patterson appointed herself Emma's unofficial grandmother and stopped by the ranch regularly to check on her. "You are blooming, dear," she would say, and Emma had to admit she felt wonderful despite the discomfort of her growing belly. On a cold night in February of 1882, a year after that fateful blizzard, Emma went into labor. Ryder rode into town at breakneck speed to fetch Dr. Harrison and Mrs. Patterson, his fear for Emma overriding everything else. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day, but Mrs. Patterson stayed by Emma's side the entire time, coaching her through the pain. "You are doing beautifully," she encouraged as Emma gripped Ryder's hand hard enough to hurt. "Just a little more, dear. You are almost there." Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry filled the room. "It is a boy," Dr. Harrison announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A healthy baby boy." Emma collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but elated. Ryder was openly crying as Dr. Harrison cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket before placing him in Emma's arms. The baby stopped crying immediately, his tiny eyes trying to focus on his mother's face. "Hello, little one," Emma whispered, completely overwhelmed with love. "We have been waiting for you." Ryder sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Emma and one finger gently touching his son's tiny hand. The baby's fist closed around Ryder's finger and he let out a choked laugh. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for giving me this." They named him Samuel, after Ryder's father who had died when Ryder was young. Sam, as they called him, was a good baby, though he kept them both exhausted with his nighttime feedings. Ryder took to fatherhood with the same dedication he brought to everything else, helping with diaper changes and walking the floor with Sam when he was fussy so Emma could rest. Tom and Charlie were besotted with the baby, constantly finding excuses to stop by the house and peek at him. "Going to make a fine cowboy someday," Tom declared, which made Emma and Ryder laugh. As the months passed and Sam grew, Emma reflected often on the strange path that had brought her to this life. If she had not gotten lost in that blizzard, if Ryder had not found her, she would never have known this happiness. The frozen tears on her face that terrible night seemed like they belonged to another person, another life. Ryder had indeed kept his promise. He had kept her warm in every sense of the word, and had given her a love and a home beyond anything she had imagined possible. Sam's first birthday was a major celebration, with half the town showing up at the ranch for cake and games. The baby was walking now, toddling around on unsteady legs and getting into everything. He had Ryder's dark hair and Emma's blue eyes, and a personality that was all his own, full of curiosity and laughter. "Can you believe it has been 2 years since you found me in that storm?" Emma asked Ryder that night after the guests had left and Sam was tucked into his crib. "Best storm of my life," Ryder replied, pulling her close. "I thank God for it every day." Life on the ranch continued to be busy but fulfilling. Ryder had hired additional help as the operation grew, and the ranch was now one of the most successful in the region. Emma had started a small garden and was selling vegetables and preserves in town, finding she had a talent for growing things. She also taught Sunday school at the church, loving the opportunity to work with children. When Sam was 2 years old, Emma discovered she was pregnant again. This time she knew the signs immediately and was able to share the news with Ryder right away. He was just as thrilled as he had been the first time, though he insisted she take things easier this time around with an active toddler to care for. Their second child, a daughter they named Rose, was born in October of 1884. The birth was easier than Sam's had been, and Rose came into the world with a lusty cry that announced her presence to everyone within earshot. Sam was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to hold her and help take care of her under Emma's watchful supervision. "We have been blessed," Ryder said one evening, holding Rose while Sam played at their feet and Emma rested on the sofa. "I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Emma agreed. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that you are my husband and these are our children." "Believe it, because I am never letting you go," Ryder said with a grin. "You are stuck with me forever, Mrs. Whitmore. I would not have it any other way." As the children grew, the ranch house filled with noise and activity. Sam was proving to be a natural with animals, following Ryder around and mimicking everything his father did. Rose was more reserved but equally curious, and she loved helping Emma in the garden and kitchen. The family became a fixture in San Bernardino society, known for their generosity and hard work. In 1886, tragedy struck when Charlie was badly injured in an accident with a spooked horse. Ryder and Emma immediately brought him into their home to recover, refusing to let him stay alone in the bunkhouse. Emma nursed him back to health over several months, and Charlie, who had never had much family of his own, became even more deeply bonded to the Whitmore family. "You did not have to do all this for an old cowboy like me," he said gruffly one day as Emma changed his bandages. "You are family, Charlie," Emma said firmly, "and family takes care of each other." When he was fully recovered, Charlie asked if he could stay on at the ranch permanently, not just as a hired hand but as part of the family. Ryder and Emma agreed immediately, and from then on, Charlie lived in a room they had added onto the house, becoming like an uncle to Sam and Rose. The years passed with the comfortable rhythm of family life. Sam grew tall and strong, every inch his father's son. Rose developed her mother's grace and kindness, along with a fierce intelligence that suggested she would be a force to be reckoned with when she grew up. Tom retired from ranch work but remained close, often stopping by to play checkers with Charlie and tell the children stories about the old days. In 1890, Emma and Ryder celebrated their 9th wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch. The house had grown over the years, with additions to accommodate their expanding family and the occasional guest. The ranch itself was thriving, with hundreds of head of cattle and a horse breeding program that was gaining national recognition. As Emma stood on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, Ryder came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. About that night 9 years ago when you found me half frozen in the snow. About how much has changed since then." "Everything has changed," Ryder agreed. "But some things have stayed the same. I still love you just as much as I did that first week, maybe even more." "Definitely more," Emma said, turning in his arms to face him. "You have given me the most wonderful life, Ryder. A home, children, a community. Everything I ever dreamed of and so much more." "You gave me all those things too," Ryder replied. "Before you, I was just going through the motions. You brought life and love and meaning to everything. You made this house a home." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Inside, they could hear Sam and Rose arguing playfully about something while Charlie refereed. It was the sound of family, of love, of home. In 1892, Emma discovered she was pregnant once more at the age of 33. It was unexpected, as she and Ryder had thought their family was complete, but they welcomed the surprise with joy. Sam, now 10, and Rose, now 8, were excited about having another sibling. The pregnancy was harder on Emma than the previous two had been, and Dr. Harrison warned her to take it easy. Ryder hired additional help for the house so Emma would not overwork herself, and the whole family pitched in to make sure she rested enough. In June of 1893, Emma gave birth to another son, whom they named Henry. The birth was difficult, and Dr. Harrison told them afterward that Emma should not have any more children, as another pregnancy could be dangerous for her. But little Henry was healthy and perfect, with blonde hair that surprised everyone until Emma remembered her own father had been blonde before his hair turned dark. "Our family is complete now," Ryder said, holding Henry while Emma recovered. "3 perfect children and the love of my life." "What more could a man ask for?" "Nothing," Emma agreed, smiling tiredly. "We have everything we need right here." As Henry grew, he proved to be different from his siblings. Where Sam was practical and Rose was intelligent, Henry was artistic and dreamy. He loved music and drawing, and Emma encouraged these talents, teaching him what she could and buying him books about art and music theory from the general store. The children grew up close-knit and loving, taught by both parents to value hard work, honesty, and kindness. Sam learned ranching from Ryder and was clearly going to take over the operation someday. Rose announced at age 12 that she wanted to be a teacher, and Emma helped her pursue this dream by ensuring she had the best education available. Henry remained artistic, and while Ryder sometimes worried about his youngest son's lack of interest in ranching, Emma reminded him that each child needed to follow their own path. By 1898, the Whitmore Ranch was one of the most successful in Southern California. Ryder had expanded into new ventures, including citrus farming, which was becoming increasingly profitable in the region. The family was well respected in San Bernardino, known for their integrity and generosity. Emma had founded a women's literacy program at the church, teaching reading and writing to women who had never had the opportunity to learn. Sam, now 16, was essentially running the cattle operation with Ryder's oversight. He had grown into a fine young man, responsible and hardworking. Rose, at 14, was already teaching Sunday school classes and talking about attending the new teachers' college that had opened in Los Angeles. Henry, at 5, was still young but showing remarkable artistic talent for his age. One evening in December of 1898, as the family gathered for dinner, Sam made an announcement. "There is a girl in town I have been seeing. Her name is Margaret Foster. Her family moved here from Colorado last year. I would like to bring her around to meet everyone, if that is all right." Emma and Ryder exchanged glances, both trying not to smile at their son's obvious nervousness. "Of course that is all right," Emma said warmly. "We would love to meet her. Is it serious?" Sam blushed. "I think so. I know I am young, but she is special. I want you all to know her." "Bring her for Sunday dinner next week," Ryder said, clapping his son on the shoulder. "Anyone important to you is important to us." Margaret Foster turned out to be a lovely young woman, intelligent and kind with a good sense of humor. The whole family liked her immediately, and it was clear that she and Sam cared deeply for each other. Over the following months, Margaret became a regular presence at the ranch, and Emma found herself growing fond of the girl who would likely become her daughter-in-law someday. As the new century approached, Emma reflected on the incredible journey her life had taken. It had been nearly 19 years since that frozen night when Ryder had found her in the blizzard. 19 years of love, laughter, challenges, and triumphs. They had built not just a successful ranch but a family and a legacy. On New Year's Eve 1899, the Whitmores hosted a party at the ranch to celebrate the turn of the century. Friends and neighbors from all over the county came to join in the festivities. As midnight approached, everyone gathered outside to watch for the new year. Ryder pulled Emma aside, away from the crowd. "I wanted a moment alone with you before the new century begins," he said, "to tell you that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. That I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Emma's eyes filled with happy tears. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "When you found me in that snow with frozen tears on my face, you promised to keep me warm from then on. And you have, Ryder. Every single day, in every way that matters, you have kept me warm. You have given me a life filled with love and joy and purpose." "We gave that to each other," Ryder replied, pulling her close. "We built this life together. And we will continue building it together for as many years as God grants us." As the clock struck midnight and the crowd erupted in cheers, welcoming the 20th century, Ryder and Emma kissed under the stars. Around them, their children and friends celebrated, but for a moment it was just the two of them, remembering that frozen night that had brought them together and grateful for every moment since. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of a life well lived. In 1901, Sam married Margaret in a beautiful ceremony at the church, and Emma gained the daughter she had always hoped Rose would provide a sibling for. The young couple built a house on ranch land and began their own life together, with Sam fully taking over the cattle operation. In 1902, they welcomed a baby girl, making Emma and Ryder grandparents for the first time. Rose graduated from the Teachers College in 1904 and returned to San Bernardino to teach at the school she had once attended as a child. She was passionate about education and quickly became beloved by her students. She lived at home, claiming she was in no hurry to marry, though Emma suspected there was a young lawyer in town who had caught her daughter's eye. Henry continued to pursue his artistic interests, and when he was 10, Ryder arranged for him to take lessons from a traveling artist who passed through San Bernardino. The artist recognized Henry's talent and encouraged him to pursue formal training when he was older. Emma and Ryder supported this dream, even though it meant Henry might eventually leave California to study art in San Francisco or even New York. Charlie remained a fixture at the ranch, now in his 60s but still spry and active. He had become the unofficial guardian of the grandchildren, teaching them to ride and telling them stories about the Old West. Tom had passed away peacefully in 1903, but his memory lived on in the stories they told and the traditions they maintained. In 1907, on their 26th wedding anniversary, Ryder took Emma back to the spot where he had found her that frozen night. They rode there on horseback on a warm spring day, the landscape completely different from that terrible blizzard. "I think about that night sometimes," Emma said, standing in the place where she had nearly died. "About how terrified and lost I was, about how I thought my life was over. And instead it was just beginning," Ryder said, taking her hand. "We were both just beginning. Do you ever regret it? Taking in a stranger, marrying someone you barely knew?" Ryder turned to face her, his expression serious. "Not for a single moment. You were never a stranger, Emma. From the moment I saw you, I knew. My heart recognized you as the person I had been waiting for my entire life." "I felt the same way," Emma admitted. "Even in my frozen, terrified state, when you wrapped your coat around me and promised I would be all right, I believed you. And I have believed in you every day since." They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out over the land they had built their life on. In the distance, they could see the ranch, bustling with activity. Sam and Margaret's house, where their 3 grandchildren were probably playing. The expanded barn where Rose kept her horse. The studio Ryder had built for Henry's art. "We built something good here," Ryder said. "Something that will last beyond us." "We built it together," Emma corrected. "And it is still growing, still changing. Our grandchildren will build on what we started and their children after them." As they rode back to the ranch, Emma felt a deep sense of contentment. Life had not always been easy. They had faced droughts, economic downturns, and personal losses, but through it all they had each other. The love they had found in that blizzard had sustained them through everything, growing deeper and stronger with each passing year. By 1910, the Whitmore Ranch was legendary throughout Southern California. Ryder had been approached multiple times by people wanting to buy the property, but he always refused. This land was their legacy, their children's inheritance. Sam ran the cattle operation with skill and innovation, implementing new techniques he had learned from agricultural journals. The ranch was more profitable than ever. Rose finally married her lawyer, a kind man named Robert Mallory, in 1908, and they had a son in 1909. She continued teaching until the baby was born, then announced her intention to return to work once he was older. Her husband supported her ambition, which made Emma love him even more. The Mallorys built a house in town but spent nearly every Sunday at the ranch. Henry, now 17, was preparing to leave for San Francisco to attend the California School of Design. It was bittersweet for Emma and Ryder, knowing their youngest child would be leaving home, but they were proud of his determination to follow his passion. The night before Henry left, the whole family gathered for dinner. All 3 children, their spouses, and the grandchildren filled the house with noise and laughter. Emma looked around the table at the family she and Ryder had created and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. After dinner, when the younger children were playing and the adults were having coffee on the porch, Sam raised his glass. "I want to propose a toast to my parents, to their love story which gave all of us life in this wonderful home, to their hard work and dedication, and to the example they have set for all of us about what a marriage should be." Everyone raised their glasses, and Emma saw tears in Margaret's eyes and Rose's. Even the men looked emotional. Ryder squeezed Emma's hand under the table, and she squeezed back. "We are the lucky ones," Ryder said quietly, "to have all of you, to have this life. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." As the evening wound down and family members began to head home or to bed, Emma and Ryder stayed on the porch watching the stars. It was a clear night and the sky was full of light. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Emma asked. "When you brought me here, I said a lot of things," Ryder replied with a smile. "What in particular? You said any decent person would have done the same." "But that is not true, Ryder. Not everyone would have gone out in that blizzard looking for someone who might need help. Not everyone would have taken in a stranger with nothing to offer. You saved my life, and then you gave me a reason to live it fully. You saved me too, Ryder said. I did not realize how lonely I was until you came into my life. How empty everything felt. You filled all those empty spaces with love and laughter and purpose. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. Emma thought about that younger version of herself, the frightened young woman with frozen tears on her face, who had thought her life was ending. If she could go back and tell that woman what waited for her, that woman would never have believed it. The blizzard that had seemed like the worst thing that could happen had actually been the best thing. It had brought her to Ryder, to this ranch, to this life. It had brought her home. In 1915, after 34 years of marriage, Emma and Ryder were still deeply in love. They were in their late 50s now, with gray in their hair and lines on their faces that spoke of years of laughter and hard work. The ranch had been passed down primarily to Sam, though it remained a family operation with everyone contributing in their own way. Rose had become the principal of the San Bernardino school, the first woman to hold that position. She and Robert had 3 children now and were pillars of the community. Henry had returned from San Francisco with a degree and a growing reputation as an artist. He had set up a studio in town and was teaching art classes while continuing to create his own work. The grandchildren were growing up, the oldest already teenagers. They ran through the ranch house with the same freedom Emma's own children had enjoyed, and she loved watching them explore and learn. She and Ryder had 9 grandchildren now, with more surely to come. One spring afternoon in 1916, Emma was in the garden when she felt a sudden pain in her chest. She dropped the basket of vegetables she had been carrying and sank to her knees, gasping for breath. Ryder found her minutes later, having come looking for her when she did not return to the house. Emma. He was at her side instantly, gathering her into his arms. "What is wrong? Where does it hurt?" "My chest," Emma managed to say. "Cannot breathe properly." Ryder carried her into the house and sent Sam riding for the doctor at breakneck speed. Dr. Harrison, now quite elderly himself but still practicing, arrived within the hour. After examining Emma, his expression was grave. "Her heart is weak," he told Ryder privately. "It could be months, or it could be years, but she needs to take things very easy from now on. No heavy work, plenty of rest." Ryder was devastated but tried to hide his fear from Emma. He insisted she spend most of her time resting, taking over all the household tasks himself, or hiring people to help. Emma protested that she was fine, but she could not deny that she tired easily now and that the pain came back whenever she exerted herself too much. The family rallied around her, with Rose and Margaret taking turns staying at the ranch to help. The grandchildren visited constantly, and Emma loved sitting on the porch with them, telling them stories about the old days. She told them about the blizzard, about meeting their grandfather, about building the ranch and watching San Bernardino grow from a small town into a thriving city. Ryder barely left her side. Every night he held her close, terrified of losing her. "You have to fight," he whispered into her hair. "I am not ready to let you go. I will never be ready." "I am not going anywhere yet," Emma assured him, though she could feel her body weakening. "We have more time, I can feel it," and they did have more time. Emma's condition stabilized, and while she was never as strong as she had been, she was able to continue enjoying her life. She could not do heavy work anymore, but she could still garden a little, still cook simple meals, still hold her grandchildren and tell them stories. In 1920, Emma and Ryder celebrated their 39th wedding anniversary with a family dinner. All 3 children were there with their families, and the house was full to bursting. Emma sat at the head of the table with Ryder beside her, looking at the family they had created and felt complete. That night, as they prepared for bed, Emma said to Ryder, "I want you to know that I have had a wonderful life, that you gave me everything I ever wanted. If my time comes sooner than we would like, I do not want you to be sad. I want you to remember all the happy times and know that I have been so blessed." "Do not talk like that," Ryder said fiercely, pulling her close. "You are not going anywhere. We are going to grow old together just like we planned." "We have grown old together," Emma said gently. "And it has been beautiful. But I need you to know how grateful I am for everything, for finding me in that storm, for loving me, for giving me this life." "I am the grateful one," Ryder insisted. "You are my everything, Emma. You always have been." They made love that night with the tenderness of long practice and deep familiarity, knowing each other's bodies as well as they knew their own. Afterward, Emma fell asleep in Ryder's arms, feeling safe and loved. She woke in the middle of the night with the pain in her chest worse than it had ever been. She managed to wake Ryder, gasping that something was wrong. He held her, calling for help, but Emma knew even as her children rushed in, as Sam rode for the doctor yet again, that this time was different. "I love you," she managed to tell Ryder as the pain overwhelmed her. "Thank you for keeping your promise. You kept me warm. You always kept me warm." "Emma, stay with me. Please stay with me." Ryder was crying, holding her hand so tightly it hurt, but Emma barely felt it through the pain. "The frozen tears," Emma whispered, smiling despite the pain. "You wiped away the frozen tears, and I have been warm ever since." Those were her last words. She died in Ryder's arms just before dawn, surrounded by her children and the love that had sustained her for nearly 40 years. The grief nearly destroyed Ryder. For weeks after Emma's death, he could barely function. He sat in their room holding her clothes, unable to believe she was really gone. His children worried about him, watching him fade before their eyes. It was Charlie, now ancient himself but still sharp, who finally got through to him. "She would not want this," the old cowboy said bluntly, sitting beside Ryder on the porch. "She would not want you to give up on life just because she is gone." "I do not know how to live without her," Ryder admitted, his voice breaking. "She was everything." "She was everything," Charlie agreed. "But she is still with you, in your children, your grandchildren, this ranch. Everything you see around you she helped build. Honor her memory by living the life she would want you to live." It took time, but gradually Ryder began to emerge from his grief. He threw himself into the ranch work, spending time with his grandchildren, watching them grow. He found comfort in the memories, in the stories they told about Emma. The family made sure he was never alone, always inviting him to dinners and gatherings. Sam and Margaret insisted Ryder move into their house so he would not be by himself, but he refused. "This house is where Emma and I built our life together," he said. "I can feel her here. I am not leaving." So the family made sure someone was always checking on him. Rose came by nearly every day after school. Henry, who had never married, moved back into the ranch house to keep his father company. They would sit together in the evenings, Henry sketching while Ryder read or simply stared into the fire, remembering. Years passed and Ryder continued on, though a part of him had died with Emma. He aged rapidly, his hair turning completely white, his steps slowing. But he found joy in his grandchildren and then his great-grandchildren as they began to arrive. He told them all stories about their grandmother, keeping her memory alive. On a cold January night in 1928, 47 years after he had found Emma in the blizzard, Ryder went to bed feeling peaceful. He had spent the day surrounded by family, telling stories about Emma to his grandchildren. That night he dreamed of her, young and beautiful as she had been when they first met. In the dream, they were standing in the snow, and Emma was smiling at him with those frozen tears on her face. But as he reached for her, the tears melted away and she was warm in his arms again. "I have been waiting for you," Dream Emma said. "It was taking you so long." "I had to watch over our family," Dream Ryder replied. "But I am ready now. I am ready to come home." Ryder died peacefully in his sleep that night, at the age of 73. His family found him the next morning, a slight smile on his face, one hand reaching out as though to hold someone else's hand. They buried him next to Emma in the church cemetery, under a tree they had planted together decades ago. The entire town turned out for the funeral, testament to the lives the Whitmores had touched. 3 generations of family stood around the grave, mourning but also celebrating a love story that had endured beyond death. On Ryder's headstone, beneath his name and dates, Sam had the stonemason carve the words, "He kept his promise. He kept her warm." The ranch continued to thrive under Sam's guidance, passing eventually to his children and then to their children. The Whitmore name became synonymous with integrity, hard work, and family values in San Bernardino. And through all the generations, the story was told of how Ryder had found Emma in a blizzard, had seen the frozen tears on her face, and had promised to keep her warm from then on. A promise he had kept every day of their life together, a love that had sustained them both through nearly 4 decades of marriage and beyond. In the ranch house that Ryder had built and Emma had made a home, her great-great-grandchildren eventually played, never knowing the woman who had lived there but benefiting from the legacy she and Ryder had created. The values they had instilled, the love they had shared, the example they had set continued to ripple through time, affecting lives they would never meet. The blizzard that had nearly killed Emma had instead brought her to the greatest love of her life. And that love, born in frozen desperation and nurtured through years of commitment and joy, had created something that would last far beyond their lifetimes. A family, a legacy, a love story for the ages. In the end, Ryder had kept his promise in every possible way. He had kept Emma physically warm that terrible night, wrapping her in his coat and taking her to safety. He had kept her warm with his love, his devotion, his unwavering commitment to their marriage. He had given her a home where she was cherished, children who adored her, and a life filled with purpose and meaning. And even after death separated them, their love remained warm, alive in the hearts of everyone who remembered them and in the family they had built together. The frozen tears that Ryder had seen on Emma's face that night in 1881 had long since melted away, replaced by tears of joy, laughter, love, and eventually grief. But through it all, Emma had been warm. Ryder had made sure of that. And in keeping that promise, he had created a life worth living, a love worth remembering, and a story worth telling for generations to come.